welcome to Joline Knits A Lot. Happy New Year! It's 2022 and I've got some crafting to share with you. I don't know about you, but I don't really like setting myself New Year's resolutions or anything that's sort of negative or implies that what I'm doing isn't good enough. I like to set myself some goals for the new year. My goals include spending some more time with you every couple of weeks and sharing my projects that I'm working on and working through my stash. I would really like for my stash to come down a little bit in size, or at least be more manageable. So how about you? Do you have some plans for the new year? Do you have knitting goals and things you'd like to make? I don't really have anything in my queue that I'm really looking forward to starting. Sometimes in the new year, it's a great time for me after I've finished all my gift knitting to start a pattern that I've been having my eye on. But right now, there isn't really anything that I'm like, ooh, I'd really like to knit that. So I have been working on a lot of little things that I'd like to share with you today. I'm wearing my Fox Thoughts sweater. This is a pattern that was in Pom Pom Quarterly. It is knit in La Bien-Aimée in a kit for this rather intense color work. And the rest of it is whole super soft in a deep plummy kind of burgundy color. We're in that part of the year in the northern hemisphere, at least where I live, where the sun doesn't come up until quite late and goes down very early. Although the days are starting to get longer now. So the lighting right now isn't great, but I hope that if you're interested in this sweater, you can have a look at some previous episodes. I also have more details on my Ravelry page. You can find my Ravelry information as well as my Instagram information in the show notes below. What have I been knitting? I have two finished objects to share with you, and one is more impressive than the other. Oh, I wanted to share with you something else before I get started with my finished objects. I found in my social media scrolling one day, a hashtag called Maker's Dozen 2022. This is a project where you work on any whips that you may have lingering from 2021, or you knit projects from stash that you have purchased prior to the beginning of this year. So any whips or stash projects are good to go. You can use the hashtag on Instagram, and I believe there are maybe some prizes. I'm not hosting this knit along, but I think it's a great idea because, as I said, I would really like to work through some of my stash, and I know a lot of people have whips or things they'd like to finish up, or maybe stash they'd like to knit through, and this is a really good sort of impetus to do that. I will be working on some projects and including them in this hashtag Maker's Dozen 2022. The idea is that you would try and work through a dozen projects. I think that I should be able to surpass that because some things are small and some things are bigger. But you'll see today that I have a couple of stash projects or whips that I started last year that fit into this category. So the first thing that I finished, if I could find them, are a pair of socks. Now I had bought some DK weight sock yarn to try at the Edmonton Fiber Frolic. This is the Squishy DK by Ginger Snap, who is a dyer out of, I believe, Calgary, Alberta. I've never knit DK weight socks, and so I wanted to give this base a try. It's a 75 merino, superwash merino, 25% nylon. So this should be great hard wearing socks for myself, hopefully, unless one of my children steals them. I knit a pair of socks using the DK Weight Vanilla sock pattern by the Crazy Sock Lady. This was a pattern that was recommended to me by some viewers a couple of episodes ago, so thank you very much. I'll be using that pattern more in the future. And here's my finished pair of socks. As I said, this is the Ginger Snap Squishy DK sock yarn. This is the Gretel colorway. And I just love these hot pink toes and heels. They're super fun. And I'm looking forward to wearing them. I have been wearing my wool socks in the house during this cold snap. But I have to say, even just wearing wool socks right now, it's so cold. I usually end up either doubling up my socks or putting on a pair of slippers. So I'm looking forward to these heavier weight socks to wear around the house. These only took about 75 grams of yarn, so I still have some left over. So what I did was I divided up the tiny little nubbin of the contrast color. I had 6 grams left, and so using my kitchen scale, I divided that into 2 tiny balls of 3 grams each. And then I divided the rest of my main color. I had 44 grams left. I divided it into 22 grams. And I'm going to try and knit a pair of just really shorty socks. I'm going to use the contrast color for the cuff, so I'll just cast on and knit as much cuff as I can get out of that little 3 gram ball of yarn. Once that's done, I'm going to switch to the main color and start the heel right away. I'll do a heel flap and gusset, and then knit the sock. And I'm hoping I have enough for a pair of shorty socks. Wish me luck. Those will be cast on, I think, in a couple of weeks. I really enjoyed knitting these. They knit super fast. I only had to knit them on 48 stitches for my size, and I used a 3.25 millimeter needle, so they were really quick. And I think that in future these would make some great gift socks because they're so fast. I'm going to try wearing them and see how the yarn holds up. I imagine it'll be pretty hard wearing because it's similar to a lot of other sock yarns, but I'll let you know how they hold up. So that's my first project for the hashtag Makers Dozen 2022. The next project I have is even smaller, and I finished it in one day. I had sort of forgotten that in December I had seen I think another post on social media about a year of dishcloths. Every month, if you signed up for a newsletter, you would get one dishcloth pattern emailed to you that you could knit through that month. And I thought, okay, that sounds like a nice palette cleanser. Sometimes it's nice just to have something small that you can knit up and finish quickly. And I do have a bit of a stash of cotton yarn, although I don't think enough to get me through the year. We will see. The first pattern came out this week, and I had completely forgotten that I had signed up. So I was delighted actually to find this little pattern in my mailbox. It is hosted by the Kitchen Sink Yarn Shop, I believe. Let me see if I made a note of it in my book. Yes, the Kitchen Sink Yarn Shop. I think you can still sign up for it if you look for it on Instagram. It would be hashtag Year of Dishcloths, I think, 2022. And this is the first one. I knitted in Dishy, which is a cotton yarn from Knit Picks. And I used the pattern asked to use a worsted weight cotton, which is fine. And she suggested a 3.25 millimeter needle. I thought that seemed kind of dense. I used a 4.5 millimeter needle, which is what I would usually use for a dishcloth, but this is the dishcloth. My gauge is a bit loose, and actually I think that I could probably go down at least one needle size. I would probably use a 4. I find that dishcloths, you wash them in hot water to get them clean, and then you dry them, and they do shrink up. So this will shrink up, but it is a bit big in its current unblocked and natural state. Anyway, this pattern is called Meg's Dress. The patterns this year are all based on literature. So this is based on Meg from Little Women. And in a month, when I have completely forgotten about it, I will get another pattern and I will start again. This pattern took about 38 grams of yarn, and I don't quite have enough of the blue to make another one, I don't think. However, if I go down a needle size and if some of them are a bit smaller, we'll see. Or I may use it for stripes, I'm not sure. I do have some more cotton yarn in my stash that I think I'd like to break free. It's been sitting there for years, like years and years. So it feels really good to get it out of stash. And I mean, we always need dishcloths. Also, I think dishcloths are a nice thing to give as gifts. So whether I keep it for myself or I give it away to somebody, I think it's just nice to have a stack of them lying around, especially nice clean ones that aren't, used and worn. I certainly went through my dishcloths this year and threw out a bunch of ones that had been well loved and well used. So starting a new stack of them for this year is, I think, something I'll be working on. And another hashtag Maker's Dozen 2022 project. It has come to pass in this very cold snap in my house that the girls and I, my two daughters and I, have been sort of fighting over the mittens in my house, which is odd because I always thought of myself as having had all these mittens, handmade things lying around to keep ourselves warm, and yet there seems to have been a shortage of mittens. I don't know how that happens in the home of a knitter, but it has. So after I finished the dishcloth and the socks, I thought I would cast on a pair of mittens that might look familiar to you. I had knit my mom a pair of mittens for Christmas. I used the simplest mitten in the world pattern by Tin Can Knits, and I love Tin Can Knits for their variety of patterns. I used some Lily and Pine yarn that I picked up at the Edmonton Fiber Frolic, and I held together the Daylily sock yarn and her dandelion lace. Now these are both in the rose petal colorway, and I knit her a pair of mittens that I really loved. They're so soft and warm, I think, because of the alpaca. So I cast on another pair, and this is where I've gotten. So I've just finished the ribbing. I think you can hear my dog grumbling about the cold. I've just finished the ribbing and I'm just about to start the stockinette of the hand. Mittens like this, especially stockinette mittens in one color, tend to go really quickly for me. So I'm looking forward to having a new pair of mittens maybe next week. I'm not sure if they'll be for me or for someone else in the household, or just go on like the mitten pile and whoever needs them will wear them. But I'm really glad to be knitting something that we have a use for right now, and also to be using up some stash. Sure, this hasn't been in my stash for very long. I only picked it up in November, but I'm really glad to be using it up. So I'm making the size adult small, which is for a hand that is about 7 inches. Mine is just slightly over 7 inches around at the widest part, but my daughters have smaller hands than I, and I think these mittens will stretch. So the adult small is the size I'll be using, and I should just have a very small amount left over. But I'm really happy with the fabric again. I'm using the same needles and the same yarn that I knit my mom's mittens with. So I'm hoping that these will be a quick finished object and another Maker's Dozen, project. It's funny, I go through periods of time where I'm knitting really large projects and working on them for a long time. And then sometimes I sort of go through this phase where I'm clearing the decks and just making a lot of small projects. And I have forgotten that when you work on a lot of small projects and sort of finish them up, you have that sense of accomplishment. And I love that, which you don't really get as often when you're working on a bigger project. So I think that after these mittens, I may be casting on possibly a pair of colorwork mittens, or maybe those shorty DK socks, but something small where you get that sense of accomplishment right away. Do you like to knit large projects, or are you a small project knitter? I usually have a little bit of both on the needles, but I do like getting that rush of finishing something and getting the joy of starting something new. So these mittens will be hopefully very useful very soon, and I'm looking forward to finishing those. The last thing I have on my needles right now is a striped sweater for myself. I had purchased this yarn probably a year ago when the Farmer's Daughter yarn company was having a sale, and that sale happened right around my birthday. I took that as a sign that I should invest, because I had been thinking about this sweater for a long time. I'm a lover of the stripes, particularly horizontal stripes. And so I sort of picked a whole bunch of different colors to knit this sweater in. This is the stripes pullover. It's a pattern by Andrea Mowry. and I've talked about it a lot before. I cast it on just after Christmas, I think, maybe Boxing Day. And I've been working on it diligently a little bit every day. It has been a really enjoyable knit for a number of reasons. It's just plain stockinette stitch, so there's not a lot of stress involved. It's very enjoyable. I'm loving using the yarn. I'm using the same yarn that I used for my husband's sweater, the Hide and Peak sweater that I finished for him for Christmas. It's called Recollect, and it's a sport weight yarn in Rambouillet, which is like a French version of merino. So it's very soft and just really enjoyable to work with. Some of the stripes are knit in a Surrey alpaca silk blend with the yarn held double to make up a similar weight to the sport weight. And so this is where I'm at. So you can see I've got a couple of stripes of the Recollect here, and then this light blue one is Surrey alpaca silk, so it's got a bit of a halo to it. And then I've got a few more stripes of the Recollect, and then this peachy one is again the Surrey alpaca silk. So I've cast off, or at least put some sleeve stitches on hold, and I'm continuing down the body, and I've just gotten to this teal stripe again. I have notes on my Ravelry page of all the different colors that I've been using for this sweater, but it's going really quickly. I think because every stripe is it is 8 rounds. And so as you knit and you finish a round, you get that sense of accomplishment and you just want to get to the next color. It's kind of like knitting self-striping socks. So it's been really enjoyable. I'm liking the colors I'm using. I'd like to prioritize length in the body for this sweater because I feel more comfortable wearing a sweater that hits me at least at the hips as opposed to a cropped length. And then if I have enough for the sleeves to be longer, so be it, I'll have long sleeves. If I don't have enough, then I'll make a 3/4 length sleeve with a longer body. But I think after I have finished knitting through 2 repeats of the pattern stripes, I'll be able to weigh the yarn and have a better idea of how many more stripes I could get. Wish me luck. Either way, I think I'll be enjoying this sweater. If the sleeves have to be a little bit shorter, that's fine. I don't mind a 3/4 length sleeve, but I'd like to prioritize length in the body because I think that makes me more comfortable wearing a longer sweater. So that's the striped sweater, and it's coming along nicely. And that is all I have on my needles today. It's been really nice working on little objects without the pressure of having to finish them for a deadline. I don't know about you, but I find the new year sort of relaxing, and it allows me some time to sort of dabble here and there in little projects that I wouldn't ordinarily pick up. I find that dishcloths are a nice little palette cleanser because you can knit something that's useful and then it's usually finished quite quickly. So if you're interested, I might suggest you try the Kitchen Sink Shop website for her dishcloth patterns, and you could sign up for the newsletter and get these free patterns as well. I should have a stack of dishcloths by the end of the year, so that's something to look forward to. I'm also looking forward to having some cozy mittens. I have been watching some podcasters who are very organized and had big plans for this year. My plans for 2022 just include being kind to myself, not putting a lot of pressure on the things that I do for enjoyment and for relaxation. So I hope if you join me for some relaxing knitting time, you won't feel pressured to finish things either. The value in knitting is whatever you get out of it. And so if you knit slowly and it takes you a long time to finish things, that's fine. If you knit things really quickly and have piles and piles of finished things, that's great too. I think it's important to get what you need out of your knitting. And for me, right now, I've enjoyed finishing things and having that sense of accomplishment in finished projects, and also just knitting on things that bring me joy. I hope your knitting is bringing you joy, and I hope in the next couple of weeks you find things that, other things that you enjoy, whether that be knitting or reading or spending time with loved ones, or cozying up by a fire. I know I plan on knitting a lot. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Bye.